Hi, I'm Gloria Makarenko. Today we have stories about seeking comfort in food and also in recovery. This is Our Vancouver. Coming up, the story of the stubborn baker pushing through disability. And toast and jam, filling our hearts and filling our bellies. But first, a call out to young people considering making positive changes in their lives. Now, January marks the start of a new year, and this is a time when many of us can make better intentions, maybe to become healthier and to mind our mental wellness. And it's a time when some might seek help and wonder what's available. Well, with us today is James Kelly, the Executive Director of Peak House. Peak House is a 10-week live-in treatment program for young people experiencing problems with substance use. Cherokee is a former client, and really nice to have you both here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So what exactly is Peak House, and what sets it apart from other treatment programs?
Yeah, so Peak House is first off, it's a provincial resource. So we take young people from across the province up until their 19th birthday, all genders, and it's a live-in program. One of the things that we do is we really work on holistic wellness. We're not just looking at stopping to use substance, but what's got people there in the first place and how can they work towards a more preferred life outside. Because also is set aside because we have an education program. So we have a schooling program for young people that may have come in who are disconnected from school or have been asked to leave. They're able to come back and many times catch up. We have a wonderful school program, and sometimes people are actually able to graduate as well.
There must be a lot involved over those 10 weeks. What were some of your first impressions when you went to Peak House?
It's very open and very safe, very safe space. I learned a lot about myself in that time, and it gave me the opportunity to actually grow, because not a lot of us come from stable places in our lives. So especially when you're a youth, you don't have control over your surroundings, who you grow up with. And so especially being brought into the city with more opportunities and more ways to grow, it was a great opportunity for me to not only get to know what's more out in the world, but more about myself.
Wow. So there was a lot crammed into those 10 weeks by the sounds of things.
Yes.
Yeah? Life-changing for you?
Yes.
Absolutely. How many people are there over that 10-week period generally? Is it the same group for 10 weeks and then you change, or is there overlap?
Yeah, so we don't operate with a cohort. It's a continual intake, which is a bit of a gift because we have young people that have been there for maybe 8 weeks that are able to help mentor and invite in someone new who's just walked in, who's feeling nervous and not sure what to expect. So we have a total of 8 beds. So at any given time, we have a maximum of 8 young people at different stages in their stay.
I see. Was that your experience as well, Cherokee, that you had someone saying, it's going to be okay?
Yeah.
Feeling a little nervous at the beginning?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and what are some of the things that you've come away with? Like, in what ways has it strengthened you or changed you, that experience?
It shifted my perspective on my relationship with the outside world, the world around me, how I carry myself, even success. I didn't really believe that there was more out there than what I grew up with. And so being given such an amazing opportunity to get to know myself, it was genuinely giving me a chance to be a good person, a good kid. Because I was a good kid, and so many of these kids are good kids. They just need to be given a chance. They need to be given the tools to be able to pick themselves back up. A lot of our youth are struggling a lot with, trauma and, struggles. And, being able to actually take a look at that and to acknowledge it and to respect that and be able to have a different relationship with that is really, I feel, what Peak House has done, for me.
Beautifully said. Like really, that was beautiful. And how does that feel when you see these kinds of transformations and people picking themselves up and being able to walk out with their head held high?
Well, listening to Cherokee always gives me chills because she has such a beautiful way of explaining her experience and the experience of other young people that come to us. But I think what she said is exactly right. Young people come to us as good, whole, capable people, and they often come to us where substance use has been a source of managing the stress or the trauma in their life. And so getting a break from that, to learn where that comes from, and getting new opportunities to move forward in their life, especially at such a young age, is so important to them.
So what kinds of skills would you say you've learned, Cherokee? I mean, in terms of advice you could give someone else who might be considering a program like this?
It taught me a lot about boundaries. And those boundaries kind of helped me become a woman. Recently turned 19, so it kind of made me feel more established in myself. It built a temple within myself. There's a lot of, respect I gained for myself after going through the 10-week program, and a lot of strength. I became more confident, and all of these things that I've learned in Peak House, I brought into, my projects and my work and my passions, and I'm really grateful for that.
You know what? That confidence is really showing here today. Like you're really bringing it. So thank you. And something I'm really curious about is the conversations that we've been having around shortages of programs, youth that need help. How is it that you have free beds right now?
Yeah, well, it's a both and. So we absolutely need more services, for sure we do. And we have open beds available. And I think what's happening is there is a shortage of accessing the services that are currently available because there is a narrative that people are dying, there's no services, people are left waiting months and months and months to get in and aren't able to access service. The pathways to accessing service for young people struggling or for families or other supportive communities working with young people isn't super clear. And so one of the reasons why we're reaching out to folks right now is to let them know we have beds, there are other services that are also available, and to help families to navigate the pathways in order to access us. For instance, if someone is not maybe ready to come into a 10-week program, we have other services where we can outreach to them and help support them to either come into our program or support them with other resources and referrals. So we really want the public to know that there is help available and we have a no waiting list in this moment.
That is a great message to get out there. I want to thank you both very, very much for being here, and all the best of the new year to you.
Thank you so much.
I do triathlons and I do cycling races, so I would like to win first place in one of those.
Just keep on trying to survive, win, and then thrive.
Our skies have been giving photographers so much to work with lately. So time now for one of our favorite features. This is where we get to highlight a few of the images that are sent in by you. And we'll start with this one. Varna Gubi took in the sunrise from a Main Street point of view. Just lovely work, Varna. Thank you very much for sharing. And on the other side of the day, Jackie Warboys took in the sunset from a street view at Qualicum Beach. Those beautiful colors. Jackie, thank you. And finally, Monita Lamb has the good fortune of being in Pemberton at this time of year. A great view of the mountain and the ranch, just wonderful. Thank you. And keep them coming. Yeah, just email your favorite photographs to us, bcphotos@cbc.ca. That's bcphotos@cbc.ca. Now, the CBC has a new channel. It's called CBC Explore, and it's full of new programs with adventurous storytelling. Johanna Wagstafffe hosts Planet Wonder, and this is a program about climate science and how climate change is kind of messing things up. So here's an excerpt from episode 1 where Johanna asks, what are the trees saying to each other about climate change?
Hello? Did you say something? Can you speak a little louder? Are you saying you're thirsty? Is this the sound of trees talking to each other? Probably not. but you've probably heard something somewhere about the fact that trees can communicate. And you've probably also heard that global warming is messing everything up. So that got me wondering, what are trees saying to each other about climate change? Trees play a major role in how carbon moves around planet Earth. You knew this was going to start with photosynthesis, right? The leaves from growing trees pull in CO2 from the atmosphere, the same CO2 we breathe out, and yes, the same CO2 released from burning fossil fuels. Add light and water, and then leaves turn this 3-ingredient recipe into sugars used by the trees to grow. The waste product of this chemical reaction, oxygen, is re-released back to the atmosphere. Carbon remains locked inside the tree. Actually, scratch that. Carbon is the tree. The trunk, branches, leaves, and roots are all made up of tiny blocks of carbon. So when you look up at a giant Douglas fir, you are looking at a tower of carbon. CO2 is what gives it mass. How is your mind not blown yet? When a tree dies, it feeds most of that carbon back into the soil as it decomposes, which helps other trees. So for millions of years, trees have been doing a great job of pulling out excess CO2 in our atmosphere. Where the trouble began is when humans started producing too much carbon for the trees to take in. Add to that, a warming climate means more intense wildfires, droughts, pests, basically things that can kill trees. What are they saying to each other about this? So we met up with world-renowned Canadian tree scientist Suzanne Simard. She has spent decades revolutionizing the way we understand how trees talk to each other, and I have been so excited to get to talk to her. First of all, welcome to my favorite forest.
Well, thanks. This is beautiful.
It's a good one, right?
Yeah.
How are trees talking to each other? Can you show us?
Yeah, so they talk to each other through their root systems. And these trees, they form a relationship with a fungus called a mycorrhizal fungus. So mycorrhiza literally means fungus root. And these fungi, which colonize the roots of the trees, which we can look at, actually will connect the trees together. So you can see there's a root coming off of this tree here, and it will go quite far.
So you can kind of see the angle, and that's how you know it's
going to come out this way, and then it explores the soil in this very networked kind of pattern. And these roots can actually go, as far as the tree is tall, so they're huge. But they fan out into these very fine root tips, and those root tips then become colonized by these mycorrhizal fungi. So we can look.
Okay.
There's some roots right there. These are the fine roots.
Oh, yeah.
And they end in these little root tips. And these root tips are where the fungus colonizes and infects the root. It's like it is an infection, but it's a good infection.
Right.
Yeah, in that the fungus will get the photosynthate from the tree, and it gets transmitted into these root tips, and then that gets transmitted into the fungus itself, and the fungus returns for it nutrients and water that it pulls up from the soil.
I see. So the tree is basically sending information to the fungus at the end of the roots, telling it what it needs,
Yes.
or what it's lacking, and then the fungi helps bring out that moisture in places that the roots couldn't reach. So trees are talking to each other through mushrooms.
Basically, yeah.
Are your hands ever not dirty?
No, my hands are always dirty.
And I've heard you describe it down here as sort of the internet.
Yeah,
Which-
it's like the internet. That's
Yeah.
a really good way to think about it.
Let's go down the rabbit hole. Trees are talking to each other below ground and through mushrooms. But get this, trees are also sending out electrical signals through leaves. And one biologist and musician found an artful way to listen in on that conversation. I'm obsessed.
As modern biology, I'm fascinated with the sound of the present moment. I'm really interested in listening to elements of the environment, everything from changes in electromagnetic radiation to sunlight to wind to plant and fungal bioelectric changes. I feel like this moment is so alive, and sometimes we don't realize it, we sort of forget. Essentially, when I'm working with plant or fungal bioelectricity, what I'm doing is using devices to run a very small current through whatever organism it is. And as the impedance changes over time, which is kind of a surrogate for bioelectrical changes, so signaling changes within the organism, note changes on a synthesizer change, and we can listen to those note changes as music. What we're listening to is not just random reactive cellular processes, it's actually the nervous system of a plant or a fungi. Plants, including trees, have phytonervous systems. So they don't have the same elements necessarily as a human nervous system, but they're using the language of electricity and action potentials to signal behavioral changes. I find what emerges is a real collaboration between natural bioelectricity or wind or waves or sunlight and myself. We think about all of the problems that Mother Nature is facing right now, it can become overwhelming. But in the present moment, we always have a choice. And in the present moment, there's power. In the present moment, there's also hope, which is really, really important when you're trying to make a change.
Suzanne, you have grown up in the forests of BC. You started your career in the logging industry, decades of forest research. But what was your first clue that the trees were talking to each other?
Yeah, I was really worried in the 1980s about how we were trying to get rid of our native plants.
Yeah.
So to grow faster conifers, in fact, we were spraying them with herbicides. And so I wanted to understand the role of those plants because I was worried that we were throwing away important parts of the ecosystem. And so birch was one of the ones that I was worried about. And so I started growing Douglas fir with paper birch and by itself. And when I grew Douglas fir with paper birch in the forest and I pulled up the roots, they were covered in an amazing array of mycorrhizal fungi, many species. And it turns out that a lot of those species linked together directly with the birch tree. So the birch and the fir were actually connected. But when I grew Douglas fir by itself, without its lovely birch neighbors, its roots had very little fungi on them. And so what was happening is that the birch was connecting with the fir and transmitting some of its sugars to the Douglas fir. And which was super interesting because, we were getting rid of birch because it shaded the Douglas fir. And I found that the more paper birch shaded Douglas fir, the more sugars it sent to Douglas fir, which was completely the opposite of what we were thinking, right? We were thinking that birch was competing for sunlight with Doug fir, but it was actually sharing its riches, its carbohydrates, its sugars with the fir.
So that was one of your light bulb moments.
That was a big light bulb moment for me. Yeah, I thought, we've got this all wrong. Here we are, we're trying to basically reduce this ecosystem to just to conifers so that we can make more money from them. And we didn't understand that all these plants, including paper birch, were essential in bringing that forest up, in the growth and diversity of that forest.
Coming up, Johanna is back with her weekly Science Smart column and a new study about when the Bering Land Bridge connected Asia to North America.
The Bering Land Bridge National Preserve is one of the most remote national parks in America, located in northwest Alaska. The preserve protects a small remnant of a land bridge that connected Asia and North America centuries ago. For decades, experts have been debating exactly how long the Bering Land Bridge existed. The new research shows that this stretch of land may have come into existence much later than previously thought. For the study, the team analyzed the ratios of nitrogen isotopes collected from sediments on the sea floor of the Western Arctic Ocean to better understand when the Bering Strait was flooded with water flowing in from the Pacific. Researchers reconstructed the sea level history of the Bering Land Bridge from 46,000 years ago, a time filled with cold glacier and warm interglacier periods. The land bridge opened up when gigantic ice sheets covered large swaths of North America. As a result, on average, global sea levels are about 130 meters lower during this part of the ice age than they are today, which helped keep the Bering Land Bridge open. The new findings suggest that the growth of the ice sheets, which led to a subsequent drop in sea levels, occurred later in the glacier cycle than previously thought. It means that more than 50% of the global ice volume at the last glacial maximum grew after 46,000 years. This is important for understanding the feedback between climate and ice sheets because it implies that there was a substantial delay in the development of ice sheets after global temperatures dropped. Eventually, as Earth warmed and its ice sheets began melting, the bridge became inundated around 11,000 to 13,000 years ago, and it disappeared under the Bering Strait. And now, your science mark. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet or an email, and I'll try to get it answered.
Probably just to keep spreading the joy that I have in my life to other people, continue helping out other people as I go.
Get straight A's.
Johanna, thank you. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko, and it is comfort food season, and that means soups and stews and, of course, bread. Well, how about a slice of the best tastes of BC, both in the bread and in what you put on the bread? That's right. Lee Murphy is owner of the Preservatory Provisions and Toast Bar on Granville Island. Lee, hello there.
Hi, how are you?
I am doing
Thank you for having me.
I love this whole idea of a toast bar. What happens at your toast bar?
Well, just like it sounds, we make a lot of toast. We brought the concept into Granville Island because of our preserves. So we have the Preservatory, and we wanted a vehicle to highlight our preserves, and what better way than toast,
Okay,
really?
but how did the preserves even start? Because you're talking about a farm, you do some whining,
Yeah, we do a lot of whining,
grapes and
yes.
wine and whining, okay.
We have a farm and winery in South Langley called Vistadoro, and we grow orchard fruits and grapes for the vineyard. And yeah, we started actually down at Granville Island 20 years ago selling the fruit that we were growing, and then I started putting some of that into jars, and next thing we know, we're selling more jars than fruit. So that's how it started.
The magic well, I like that. It kind of okay, so where do we start? This is a gorgeous toaster, by the way. Do you actually use this in your shop?
These are the ones we use, yeah. The other ones are silver. We bought one copper one because, copper pots and jam making are kind of a thing in our world. So yeah, they're amazing toasters, and we're using some delicious breads. We're using Terra Bread's cheese and walnut bread.
Oh,
they're sourdoughs.
I love those.
And we're also using Nelson the Seagull, their sourdough and their sprouted rye. They're just
beautiful.
amazing.
Let's get to it. Where do we start with it? So this is the
So
the
we've got
actual...
the toast down, getting warm, but I pre-toasted some because it does take quite a while.
Yes.
So I thought we could do the ricotta toast today.
So is that what you brought here?
Yeah, so we have a whipped ricotta.
What do you put in there? Do you just whip it, or would you add something to it?
We whip it with some olive oil, some lemon zest, some lemon juice, lemon salt. Yeah, it's a really delicious.
So we're talking a little bit of a sweet, savory kind of toast.
Exactly.
You can go one way. All right.
Yeah, that is our goal here. So do you want to?
Want me to spread?
Yeah,
well, how much would you put on? Like, is that fair?
That's probably half the amount that we need on
Really?
there. Honestly, these are
like this
big,
already.
generous, delicious
Look
toasts.
at that.
Yeah. Oh, nice edge-to-edge work. That's exactly how our toasties
But this is a good spreader.
I know.
You need a
It's
good
all
spreader.
about the spreader. It's all about the ingredients.
Okay, so this is ricotta
that's
spread.
Beautiful. Good job. So now we're going to put some of the pomegranate. So we're
you do the
seasonally putting toppings on. So
beautiful.
right now pomegranates obviously are beautiful. So we've got some little pomegranate seeds to go on there. We had raspberries, at the end of the summer there, and we'll move over to strawberries once they're in season. We're trying to keep as seasonal and local as possible down at the Toast Bar.
Ricotta, pomegranate, and are you putting something green on there too?
In a minute.
Okay.
First things first.
All right.
The Preservatory preserves.
Right.
So we have to get, that is what this is all about. So this is our raspberry with Merlot and peppercorn. So it really does bring out all that delicious savoriness with the pepper in there. And we're pretty generous with our jam too. It makes it a little hard to eat and messy, but you know
don't
what?
skimp on the jam there, Lee. That's
It's
beautiful.
about-
Look at that.
It is
Gorgeous
about
piece of
the
toast.
jam.
Okay, but I love
Yeah.
that color combination. I mean, the red just pops when you've got that white
And now we
ricotta
are
back
going to do some of the mint. So we do a little chopped fresh mint on there to make it, This looks
gorgeous.
great at Christmas, obviously.
Yes, I know.
And then we do a little drizzle of olive oil just because we're that extra.
Wow,
because
so you've
it
got
is
the
toast.
sweetness. Well, you can't go wrong with all. I even
You
like the terra breads, the olive bread with a peanut butter on it or
Oh,
something too, and you
yeah.
get that sweet and a
and
little bit of
savory.
salty, and
Yeah.
it's just that's gorgeous too.
Yeah.
What? That's it?
That's it. That's all we do with
Do
it.
you have a knife or something? I'm going to use a knife. I don't want to
You know what?
bite into that. We got.
Let's do this. Yeah, we've got the technology here.
How do people react as they're standing around the?
They're really enjoying what we're doing. Oh, sorry.
That's I'm still.
Yeah, it's a bite. It is
It
a
is a
big
good
bite,
bite.
especially on TV. But they're reacting really well. We've got about 6 different toasts on the menu, and they're going to change seasonally. Again, it's all about highlighting our preserves. So our avocado toast has our peach with jalapeno and tequila preserve on it, which I have open if you want to try.
I do want to try that. But okay, tell me about some of the other preserves.
Yeah,
then.
so we
Peach and
have
tequila.
so we're seasonally producing our preserves. Our number 1 sellers are fig and walnut wine. Patrick makes the walnut. Our husband. He's just my husband.
Okay.
He makes the walnut wine that goes into the fig jam.
Okay.
And then so that one's kind of like a core one that we have available all the time, and then we seasonally do them. So right now we've got a strawberry and balsamic with pink peppercorn in the spring, and our peach with jalapeno for the summer. And winter we're doing blood orange with Campari and vanilla.
I love
so
this.
yeah, we're really having fun with the seasons, and yeah.
And what's this?
That is my cookbook. The front half.
Just by the way.
Just by the way, front half is making preserves.
Yes.
Back half is cooking with them. So we have so many really interesting flavors that people weren't really sure what to do with them. For example,
Yes.
our green tomato with garam masala. It came out of necessity. We were growing tomatoes that weren't necessarily ripening in our wet, region in the Fraser Valley. So we made a green tomato jam.
Lee, this is fantastic. I wish you every success. It sounds like you're on to something that's only going to continue to grow.
We hope so. Thank you
so
much. So
here's
please
to
enjoy.
the Toast Bar on Granville Island, the Preservatory, wines and beyond, and preserves. Thank you so much. And a toast to you and the new
Toast to
year.
you as well. Cheers.
That is gorgeous. It was really numbing.
Thank you.
The pomegranate's popping. You want to go out and see some live music? Grand Prairie, Alberta's Tennille Towns plays the Commodore Friday, January 20th. And the Atlanta rapper JID plays the PNE Forum Tuesday, January 24th. Coming up, a tribute to a longtime Vancouver music journalist who had a huge influence. Hi, you're watching Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Now, last week we heard the news that influential Vancouver rock music critic Tom Harrison had died. And he's remembered as a titan of his industry who shaped the local music scene. As Joel Ballard reports, friends say he could identify huge music acts long before they became mainstream.
DOA frontman Joe Keithley remembers the first article Tom Harrison ever wrote about his former band, The Skulls.
He wrote this article in The Straight and said, "The Skulls are undoubtedly Vancouver's most hated band." And we went, oh, well, that's pretty good press, right?
The two men became lifelong friends, bonding over everything from music and hockey to beer. Harrison recently died over the holidays, leaving behind a legacy as an industry legend who helped shape Canada's music landscape.
He knew more about music than the next 10 people put together.
His career as a music critic began at the Georgia Straight. He then joined the Province newspaper, where he stayed for 37 years. Industry experts say Harrison's finger was always on the pulse.
Tom had this ability to cut to the quick and, just sense what was important. and also timely, or what was going to be timely.
A critic who could be found at every live performance, unswayed by the corporate music machine.
He always found time to sort of tip a hat to a smaller artist. And those smaller artists, I mean, we're talking Bryan Adams, Sarah McLachlan, Skinny Puppy. He was writing about them quite a bit before everybody else.
Harrison also left a lasting impression on his colleagues at the province.
He was such a big champion, but also so fair. He could be very critical, but it was often very fair.
But he was more than just a music critic, also a musician in his own right, an athlete, a friend, and a husband.
He was kind.
He was a very, very happy-go-lucky kind of a guy.
Long live Tom Harrison. He was the best.
Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Save more money for buy house. Why not?
It's been a tough year for everyone, I think, but I'm excited for the new year, that's for sure.
Joel, thank you so much for that lovely tribute. Well, here's another story full of determination and inspiration. Jessica Kruger is the stubborn baker who makes custom cakes and cookies in Vancouver. And as she explains, the name comes from refusing to let a disability stop her from achieving her dreams.
I think probably the first time I was like aware of how much I loved baking and like the joy that it brought to me was probably making gingerbread houses at Christmas with my mom and sister. My grandma used to make mint Nanaimo bars, and those were definitely my favorite. I would sneak into the fridge and steal some at night when everybody else had gone to bed. I loved them so much. It was my grandma and my mom that introduced me to baking and sort of made me fall in love with it for the first time. I own a custom dessert business called The Stubborn Baker. Everything from cakes to cookies, cupcakes, all the treats for special events. The Stubborn Baker was named as a reflection of some of the challenges I faced being somebody that uses a wheelchair, starting a small business. But when I was 15, I got my first summer job as a house painter. 2 stories up, no harness, and then working for like 5 minutes when suddenly I felt faint and I knew what was about to happen. I tried to hang my body over the ladder in the second that I had, and obviously that didn't do anything. I had broken my neck in 4 places. Before that happened, I was super active. I played basketball, softball, volleyball. Every single thing that I had known about life was turned upside down, and I had to figure out how to do everything in a brand new way. Ever since I had my accident, people have referred to me as stubborn, and I take it as a compliment. One of the things that I turned back to in many ways was baking, and for many years it was a hobby that I did for friends and family. I started kind of getting invested in the decorating side of things. I eventually sort of saw what was right in front of me the whole time and started to look for pastry schools at that point, and then, started to chase the dream. I started looking into the different schools in the area and applied to one that I had been to previously, so I knew the space was wheelchair accessible, and they just said they weren't willing to accommodate me. And then a different school I applied to take like a few one-off classes, they said that I would have to pay for 2 spots because I was going to take up double the room. Third one I went and spoke with was VCC, Vancouver Community College. Totally different experience than the first 2, and a huge relief for me, for sure. And yeah, it ended up working out great there. That's stubbornness, Can't take no for an answer. Being in a wheelchair, kind of the only option is to become a problem solver, because literally every time I leave the house in the morning, I know that I'm going to be faced with some sort of challenge that I'm going to have to figure out. Finally accepting that this was my reality and I was somebody that used a chair, and embracing that it was cool to be a part of that community. So in 2019, I had finished pastry school and decided to start my business, The Stubborn Baker. I moved into a commissary kitchen, so it's a shared commercial kitchen space, and was able to, legitimately start everything there. And so 3 years later, we're still going strong. Recently, I had the opportunity to do some cookies for Arc'teryx, and then I got to actually go to one of their events and like hand the cookies out, and just to see the excitement of like, oh my God, I have that jacket, and people like wanting to grab the cookie that matched their jacket. And I feel like for the most part, I miss out on that. I don't often get to see like in the moment the reaction to what I've created for the person it was meant for. If there's anything I ever want people to take from my journey, it's that there will always be people that tell you you can't do something or you're not capable of it. But at the end of the day, you're the only one that gets to decide what you can or can't do. So I think I'm definitely learning how to be stubborn in the moments when I need to be, but give myself that little bit of grace in the moments when I need a little bit of a break and take a step back from the stubbornness. It's hard though. The reason I love baking is because it allows me to create something that brings joy to other people. So we're going to create this really fun spiraled icing on a cupcake. You're gonna lay out a piece of plastic wrap and you're gonna create a strip of icing in each color. So once you have your icings all set up in that plastic wrap, you're ready to pop it into your piping bag, pipe it onto your cupcake in that beautiful spiral, and your cupcakes are ready for your next holiday party. This tip works great for cupcakes, but it's also great for borders on cakes as well. Wishing you a very happy holidays from the Stubborn Baker.
Coming up, a renewed push to repair clothing instead of just tossing out the old. Welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Gloria Makarenko. Well, you may have a few new pieces of clothing you bought or maybe were given over the holidays. But you know, that doesn't have to mean out with the old, especially when it comes to worn out clothing. Our Johanna Wagstafffe is looking at ways to hold off on tossing those tattered threads.
Leather jackets, sandals, even Valentinos. If it's broken, this studio in East Vancouver wants to fix it.
We've seen thousands of items every month, and we're keeping all those items out of a landfill.
Metro Vancouver residents throw out an average 8 kilos of clothes every year. That's the weight of about 44 t-shirts. And Return at Depot stopped accepting textiles earlier this year.
I think that you can buy new shoes every 6 months to a year, but when you choose to repair it, you're making a choice that these are my boots and I want to keep wearing them.
Over in Richmond, Renew specializes in repairing outdoor gear.
I was also part of a waste management project in my previous company. We talked to a lot of local waste management team for waterproof fabric. They all saying waterproof fabric is like plastic, so there's no better way to recycle them instead of only going to incineration.
He repairs the kind of clothes you see a lot on the West Coast. Down jackets, waterproof pants, and also ski gear.
I think the best way, if the material cannot be fully recycled, the best way is to make the user life longer. That's the reason why I started this company.
Buying new clothes comes with more than one kind of cost. Up to 8% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions are from the textile industry, according to the UN.
There's just no way we can keep going the way we are in terms of the amount of waste that we're creating as a society.
This Vancouver consultant wants to make it easier for retailers to offer repairs to their customers by selling them something he calls a renewal service.
Talking about repair, maintenance, alterations, and then refurbishment for resale. It allows the retailer to offer these services, but without taking on the load of the complex operations. Making it easy and streamlined and convenient is so crucial.
But even as these businesses want to help mend your clothes, it's a skill they also encourage learning.
We're really excited to see people that do repair their own things.
The repair isn't just something that other people do, it's something that you can do yourself if you're looking for a new career or even just a fun new hobby at home.
Keeps, things out of landfill, it keeps stuff going. It's important, it's kind of the future.
A future where the clothes we wear have a little more history. Johanna Wagstafffe, CBC News, Vancouver.
I've had to think a lot about my New Year's resolution, trying to figure out something that has to do with just being more joyful.
It is another year like any other, absolutely. Yeah, it's another opportunity to really enjoy life.
All right, still on the topic of clothing, if you really don't want your dress or your slacks anymore, you can donate them to charity. The thrift store trend is in full swing, but back in 1983, the movement was just beginning. So here's a story from our CBC archives.
5 days of the week, hundreds of discarded items end up here at the Salvation Army Depot on Gottingen Street. Huge piles of garbage bags that contain things people no longer want are sorted by the staff. It's a never-ending task. The Army is anxious to receive good quality, clean items. Most things such as shoes, clothing, household items are sold in their thrift shops. There's also a constant need for furnishings such as beds, Chesterfields, stoves, and fridges. According to Major Harold Cull, there's a big demand for clothes manufactured during the last few years.
People come in and they even want style. They come in and they say, you know, have you got shoes here? And they look at the shoes, and if they see the shoes aren't in, stylish fashion, they say, well, we don't want that. Jeans, shoes, and things like that must be in style.
Most of us immediately think of the Salvation Army when we have things to give away. But many other charitable organizations and some churches are also anxious to receive discarded clothing and furniture. Brunswick Street United Church also maintains a center on Gottingen Street. Anne Cruikshanks, who runs the center, says there's a growing need for second-hand items that are in reasonable condition.
Any type of household article at all. Desperate need there. Anything at all. Dishes, furniture, fridges, stoves, anything.
If you have piles of magazines you'd like to get rid of, you'll find every hospital in the area would love to have them. The hospitals can also use books for their libraries, but don't send old, worn-out ones that children and adults probably won't enjoy. We think you may be surprised at some of the things organizations need. For example, if you're like me and have a drawer full of eyeglasses, you may want to donate them to Operation Eyesight. It's run by the IODE, and the glasses they receive are sent to third world countries. Don't throw away used hearing aids. The Speech and Hearing Clinic in Halifax would like to have them. Then there's the Canadian Bible Society. They want stamps. The stamps are weighed and sold for $3.50 a pound. The proceeds go to the Society's work. During the course of your spring cleaning, you may discover you have more coat hangers than you need. In this case, you can make a little money. Some dry cleaners will buy them back for 1 or 2 cents a hanger. While we were researching this item, we discovered there's actually a place in the United States that wants to hear from people with mismatched feet. Believe it or not, people with 2 different sized feet are invited to write to them, and for a nominal fee, they'll arrange exchanges.
At the end of this program, we like to tip our hats to our talented photojournalists on staff here at CBC Vancouver. They bring us images in their artful ways that give depth and more character to the stories that we cover. So here's a sampling from what they saw this past week. And that's all for our Vancouver for this week. I hope you'll join me weekday afternoons on CBC Radio 1 for On the Coast. For now, bye-bye.